let's be honest, the hero didn't always earn that W. Sometimes the villain had the better plan, the better team, the better everything. But then the script said, nah. So today we're breaking down every time the villain should have won, and how the movie cheated to stop them. Now, before we get ripped apart in the comment section, it is important to note that these movies and their villains are not bad at all. They are some of the most iconic pieces of art ever made, and we love them. But there's a problem. Writers make these bad guys so good, so smart, and so powerful that they're almost impossible to defeat by the heroes. And most times, if the hero can't win on their own, the writers have to step in. They do 4 main things to make sure the villain doesn't win, and the first one is shown perfectly by Scar in The Lion King. Just look at what happens in the climax of the movie. Simba has successfully returned to take over control of the Pride Rocks, but then Scar plays the same manipulation game that made Simba believe he's responsible for Mufasa's death. And guess what? It works.
If it weren't for you, Mufasa would still be alive. It's your fault he's dead. Do you deny it? No.
Simba still feels guilty, and before you know what's happening, he is hanging for dear life over a ledge. The same predicament that his father experienced before he died. Standing over him is Scar. He looks like a winner. He has the kingdom, he has the army, and he has his enemy right where he wants him. Then he leans forward and sinks his claws into Simba's paws. He gets close, his face right next to Simba's ear. He has a choice. He can push Simba and stay quiet as he watches him fall. This is the moment where the movie should end with a victory for the villain. Instead, Scar whispers a secret.
I killed Mufasa.
The second those words leave his mouth, the scene changes. Simba's fear turns into anger. The memory returns, and the guilt that controlled him for years disappears in an instant. Then he attacks Scar, pins him to the ground, and forces him to scream the truth so the whole kingdom can hear it.
I killed Mufasa.
And that was the problem. Writers intentionally make villains unable to shut their trap because that is the only way they can feel they can be defeated. This is the monologue trap. It is a tool used to break the logic of a smart character. We all know that Scar is a conniving genius. He spent years hiding in the shadows, tricking everyone, and setting up a perfect plan to take the throne. He is a master of lies. So it makes little sense that a man or a lion that smart would suddenly decide to blurt out his biggest, most dangerous secret to the one person who can use it against him. But the crazy thing is that Pixar mirrored the same ledge scene in Monsters, Inc. Remember that part in the movie where Sully was hanging at the bottom of a door? Randall had been chasing Boo, Mike, and Sully all through the door vault. But when he finally catches them and retrieves the child he is after, he falls into the same monologue trap that Scar suffered. Randall had successfully kicked Sully out of a room, but Sully managed to hold on to the door's threshold. All Randall had to do here was finish him off quickly, except he doesn't. Instead, he mocks Sully and starts talking about finally getting rid of him.
You've been number one for too long, Sullivan. Now your time is up.
This gave Boo a chance to complete her character arc. She had been scared all through the movie, especially of monsters like Randall and Waternoose. But seeing her monster friend in danger, she finds her courage and goes beast mode on Randall. Don't get things twisted, her courage was well-deserved and not forced in any way. But Randall wasting time about taking action is still an issue with many villains. And do you know what's really crazy? The same trap caught Waternoose in the same movie. Waternoose is a very successful businessman, with the respect of the city and of the CDA. At the end of the movie, it looked like he would win. He was chasing down Sully and the kid while the CDA handled Mike. But because he is blinded by anger and ambition, he doesn't know when Sully leads him into the simulation room and tricks him into confessing. Sully must have gotten the memo too, that villains just like to talk. And he was right, because once Water Noose catches hold of him, he shouts that he will kidnap 1,000 children before he lets the company die. Then he adds a little extra.
And I'll silence anyone who gets in my way!
He feels like a giant at that moment, but he didn't realize that he had confessed to a massive crime while the cameras were rolling. He had almost won, and could have won, if the writers hadn't made him blab a confession at the end. Now imagine the alternate versions where Scar and Water Noose never say the truth, and Randall didn't waste any time in finishing Sully off. The villain would have earned it, but the problem is, those endings would feel wrong, and that is why the monologue exists. These villains are too strong for a clean defeat, so talking becomes the only way to break them without breaking the tone of the story. The confession gives the hero truth, timing, and moral authority all at once. But this is only the first move, because once you notice this pattern, you start seeing the other three everywhere. And it always starts with the villain opening their mouth. The next move writers use to make the villains fail requires something more subtle. This is Lord Shen. His beautiful feathers are dirty, and he looks like he can't believe what just happened. A few moments ago, he was winning. He had several cannons, a whole army, and he had shot a massive ball of fire at several kung fu masters and a panda. Then thought that was the end. But instead of being defeated, Po did something impossible. He danced around with the cannonballs that Shen launched at him. And when the last one came, he threw it right back at Shen. Now, the Peacock's grand plan has totally collapsed. And as he stares at the destruction Po caused, you can see it in his eyes. This was not how it was supposed to end. Po just standing there, calm and steady, feels wrong to Shen. The panda should be severely wounded. In fact, Po should be broken and pissed off, because Shen took everything from him. His parents, his home, his past. Which is why Shen had to ask,
How did you do it?
And the truth is, we who feel Shen should win want to know too. This is because Shen was an incredible villain. He wasn't just some mean bird, but a genius with so much charisma. He was an extremely intelligent and totally ruthless dictator who wanted to take over the whole of China. Dude even invented a brand new weapon, a cannon that shot balls of fire, to destroy the tradition of Kung Fu forever. He was so dangerous that he almost wiped out the entire species of pandas just to make sure a prophecy wouldn't come true. He was almost impossible to beat, and the creators of the movie knew this. They had made a villain who was too perfect. So, to answer the question Shen just asked Po about how he did it, how he won, they answered with a plot armor. They made sure a soothsayer, a wise goat who worked for Shen, would be there to save Po and help him find that inner peace. Without that specific help and a little bit of movie magic, Shen would be the ruler of China right now. This happens all the time. When a villain is too good at their job, the story has to step in and save them with something philosophical or moral. We call this plot armor because it's like the hero's wearing an invisible suit of armor made out of the script itself. No matter how hard the villain hits, the hero survives because good has to win over evil. Lord Shen's predecessor also suffered the same fate. Tai Lung was a beast and a master of Kung Fu. To get to the final fight, he had to break out of a high-security prison, fight his way through 1,000 armed guards, and defeat the Furious Five. Then he faced his old teacher, Shifu, and kicked his butt too. He did all of that and should have won. But when he matched up against Po, he met the shock of his life. From the first punch, Tai Lung has no control over the fight. He moves faster and hits harder, chases the panda across rooftops, downstairs, through the village, and lands blow after blow that should have ended the fight several times over, just like it did with Shifu and others. However, every time Tai Lung catches him clean, Po manages to survive, sometimes by accident, sometimes in the weirdest way possible. even when Tai Lung manages to retrieve the dragon scroll that he's been fighting for his entire life, he gets another shocking revelation. It is just a blank piece of paper with a philosophical meaning. But here's where things get even more confusing for the villain. We all know that Tai Lung is a genius at what he does, so he tries to use a special move to hit Poe's pressure points and freeze his body. However, because Poe is a big, round panda, the move doesn't work. It just tickles him. Think about that. Tai Lung spent years perfecting his skills, but he lost because the hero was too fluffy for his attacks to land. That is the ultimate plot armor. The villain's superior technique is beaten by the hero's body shape. It makes you realize that being a villain is a very tough job. You can be the smartest, the strongest, and the most prepared person in the room, but if the hero has plot armor, you're going to lose anyway. Whether it's a blank scroll or inner peace, the universe will find a way to make sure the bad guy fails. But if creators are not using plot armor or monologues to kill the villain, they use something that always ends up being hilarious. And the truth is, we always love it. The 1997 movie Hercules opens with a power problem. Zeus rules Olympus, and Hades rules the underworld, resentful and sidelined, counting the years until a prophecy clears the way for a takeover. But when Hades learned that Zeus's son Hercules would grow up to ruin the prophecy for him, he decided to kill the child. Except there was one problem. Hercules is still a god, and gods can't be killed.
You can't. They're immortal?
Bingo! They're immortal!
So he came up with a brilliant plan of turning the child mortal before ending him. To carry out this plan, he sent his two assistants, Pain and Panic. He handed them the exact potion to get it done. The only catch is that they must give the child the whole thing to drink, or else he won't turn mortal. Hades did everything a top-tier villain is supposed to do. He outsourced the dirty work so he could keep his hands clean and focus on his big takeover. But that brings us to the third trick writers use to stop a perfect villain. They give the bad guys the most incompetent henchmen in the world. This is the henchman problem. If you watch the scene where Pain and Panic kidnap baby Hercules, you see exactly how the W was stolen from Hades. You see, they had successfully gotten the baby out of Olympus and brought him down to Earth. They even started feeding him the potion that was supposed to turn him into a mortal. But because a couple of farmers showed up and scared them, Pain and Panic ran away and dropped the bottle, leaving a single drop inside that glass. That one drop was the difference between a dead baby and a mortal one with the strength of a god. Hades should have won right there. If his henchmen had stayed for 5 more seconds to finish the bottle, Hercules would have been killed, or at least fully human. But the incompetence doesn't stop at a dropped bottle. These two are so bad at their jobs that they lied to their boss for nearly 2 decades. Hades spends 18 years relaxing because he thinks his enemy is dead. Imagine being the king of the underworld and realizing your entire plan failed 18 years ago because your employees were too afraid to tell you they messed up. And as if that wasn't bad enough, in comes another incompetent employee of the month, Meg. Hades actually had a second chance to win using her. Meg is smart and beautiful, and she knows exactly how to find a hero's weakness. She was supposed to work for Hades to pay off a debt, but instead of staying professional, she falls for the hero. This is another way writers used the villain's own team to sabotage them. Hades had the perfect spy, but the script gave her a heart, and that heart turned her into a double agent. Do you think a guy as scary as Hades would really hire people this unreliable? Of course not. But if he hired someone like a professional assassin, the movie would be over before the first song. We see this same bad hiring issue in The Emperor's New Groove. Yzma is a brilliant scientist. She is a master of potions and has spent years assisting the Emperor in managing the kingdom. But when he fires her, she creates a devilish plan to take the throne. All she needs is for her assistant, Kronk, to use the right poison. It is a simple task. But Kronk is the king of the henchman problem. He is a great chef, but he's a terrible killer. He mixes up the vials because, according to him, all the poisons look alike. So, instead of killing the Emperor, he turns him into a llama.
This isn't poison. This is extract of llama. Ugh.
Think about how frustrating that is for Yzma. She did the hard work of chemistry and politics, but she lost because her helper couldn't get the right poison. And just like Pain and Panic, Kronk fails to finish the job when Yzma tells him to take the llama out of town. He gets distracted by his own conscience. But it gets worse. Later in the movie, Yzma is desperately trying to find Kuzco before he reaches the palace. She is on a ticking clock. Every second matters. But where is her henchman? Well, Kronk is busy playing jumping monkeys with a group of kids.
99 monkeys jumping on the bed.
One fell off and bumped his head.
He's literally singing nursery rhymes while the villain's entire future is on the line. He tells Yzma he can't help her search the house because he still has 94 monkeys to go. Yzma is a genius who's being held back by a man who takes his double Dutch jumping rope very seriously. The writers made Yzma so good at being bad that the only way to beat her was to anchor her to an idiotic partner. Kronk isn't a bad person, but as a henchman, he's a walking disaster for Yzma's career. All this makes you realize that being a supervillain is mostly just a really stressful job in human resources. However, wait until you see the final reason villains lose. This one is not about the henchman or the hero, but something totally personal. Imagine being a villain who is so good at being bad that you actually become a superstar. That is exactly what happened to Ernesto de la Cruz in the movie Coco. This guy isn't just a musician, but the most famous person in the history of Mexico. He has a giant palace, thousands of fans, and a reputation for being the good guy. He has already won at life and was still winning even at death. But Ernesto has a secret that is darker than anything you can imagine, and the only reason he gets caught is that his ego is simply too big for its own boots. Ernesto was so obsessed with his own fame that he couldn't just stay a singer. He wanted to be in every movie and every book so that everyone would keep talking about him forever. He even played a character in a famous old movie who poisons his friend just to get ahead. This sounds like a fun movie role, right? But here's the crazy part. Ernesto actually used that movie to show off what he did in real life. He murdered his best friend Hector, and then he acted out the murder on the big screen.
But in the movie, Don Hidalgo poisons the drink.
Poison!
He used the exact same words in the movie that he used on the night he killed Hector. He made a toast and said he would move heaven and earth for his friend right before handing him a poisoned drink. Because Ernesto thought he was untouchable, he basically left a giant clue in a movie that millions of people watched. He thought no one would ever be smart enough to connect the dots, but the young kid Miguel did. If Ernesto had just been a little bit more humble and stayed off the movie screens, his secret would have stayed buried forever. He would have stayed a hero, but he loved himself so much that he couldn't help but brag about his success through his acting. Even when he's cornered, he tells Miguel that you have to be willing to do whatever it takes to seize your moment. He is so blinded by his own legend that he confesses to being a monster just because he wants to feel important. He traded his entire legacy just to have one more moment of feeling like the smartest man in the room. But Ernesto isn't the only one who lets his pride ruin a perfect victory. Let's talk about Commander Rourke from Atlantis, the Lost City. Rourke is a professional soldier who's smart, tough, and has a plan that actually works. Close to the end of the movie, the battle is over, and he's won. He has the magical heart of Atlantis. He has the princess locked in a container, and his trucks are ready to drive away. He is minutes away from becoming the richest man in the world. All he had to do was leave. That's it. But Rourke has a giant ego that needs to be fed. He wants money, yes, but he also wants to feel like the boss. So, right before he leaves Atlantis, he decides to punch Milo in the face. He knocks him to the dirt, breaks his glasses, and smashes a photo of Milo's grandfather.
Oh, yeah. Look at it this way, son.
It was a totally useless move. It didn't get him more treasure, and it didn't help him escape. The guy did it simply because he wanted to show Milo who was in charge. And that was his biggest mistake. When his crew sees him being that mean for no reason, something clicks in their heads. They realize that Rourke is a heartless bully. Because of that one punch, a major part of his team decides to quit. They grow a conscience and choose to help Milo instead of taking the money. Rourke's ego told him that his men would follow him no matter how evil he acted, but he was wrong. He treated them like they didn't matter, and they left him to face the music alone. But Rourke still doesn't learn his lesson. As he's trying to escape in a hot air balloon, he soon realizes that they were losing altitude because of the attacks by Milo. So he needs to lose some weight fast. However, instead of being a true leader, he decides to betray his most trusted partner, Helga Sinclair.
That's it, unless someone wants to jump.
Ladies first.
He throws her off the ship to save his own skin and tells her it's nothing personal. But it was very personal to Helga. His ego made him think his life was the only one that mattered. This backfires on him quickly. Helga survives the fall long enough to fire a flare gun at the balloon, destroying Rourke's only way out. He could have been a billionaire, but he lost everything because he couldn't stop being a jerk to the people who helped him. At the end of the day, Ernesto and Rourke are actually their own biggest enemies. They spent years building these incredible plans, and then they tear them down in 5 seconds just because they want to feel powerful. They have the win right in their hands, but they traded it all just to show off or act like a big shot. You see, when villains fail like this, they almost look like idiots, but they are not. The real idiots take a different form, and if you want to know how to write one you either love, like Kronk, or one you hate, like Scrappy Doo, then you need to watch this video here.